Most people who grew up with videotape remember how smooth it looked. If you recorded a newscast or a sporting event or a soap opera directly to videotape, it has this sort of smooth, fluid motion. If that's the case, why do most videotape conversions look worse than the original and not as smooth? In this tutorial, I'm going to answer that question and also teach you how to convert videotape to digital video correctly. We'll also cover what you need to do if you want your conversion to look smooth even after being uploaded to YouTube. Now, I just want to state this is me working without a script, very informal tutorial, and this is aimed at a beginner audience. There are a lot of advanced topics I could go into, such as noise reduction, but I'm going to keep it simple. I want everyone to learn this, and we can go into advanced topics later. Also, we're going to use very low-cost hardware in order to do this. $20 should be all you would ever need to perform these conversions. And we're also going to use completely free software tools. In this tutorial, I'm using Windows 7 64-bit, but the same concepts apply no matter what operating system and tools you're using, so I hope even if you're not running Windows or can't use these tools that you'll keep watching. So first off, let's identify the problem. The specifications for North American Analog Video, that is NTSC video, states that video is stored, broadcast and stored, at 30 frames per second. What most people don't understand is that each frame actually hides two different images 1/60th of a second apart in time. The two different images are stored mashed together in the single frame. This is known as interlaced video because the images are interlaced on alternate lines. Let's take a frame of interlaced video and zoom in, and you can see exactly what's going on. Now, do you see those ragged edges where there's motion? If it looks like two different images are sort of mashed together, that's because they are. Interlaced video stores one image on the even lines, that is to say lines 0, 2, 4, 6, etc., and another one on the odd lines 1, 3, 5, 7, etc. Each of these sets of lines is called a field. So while analog video is 30 frames per second, it is also, technically correct, 60 fields per second. Because each field is an image, it's really 60 images per second. That is what gives it its smoothness and its detail. So in order for us to convert videotape to digital video correctly, all we need to do is make sure that we capture both fields, that is all the lines, and that we also convert it properly, extracting both sets of lines and converting them into full frames so that we end up with a 60 frame per second digital video. So in order to get started, we're going to need a piece of hardware that can take analog video and convert it into digital video. Ever since about 2005, there have been very many of these devices, some a little more expensive than others. You can get practically all of them for $20 or less. You can find them used on eBay or sometimes even new on Amazon or wherever. Here's three of these devices. The first one is very cheap and is marketed under very many names. It's commonly known as an easy cap device, and this is actually the device that I'm going to be using in this tutorial. It goes by many different names, not all of them English, but I thought I'd show it to you so you could recognize it. Another common device, and one that I actually prefer to use, is the Dazzle DVC100. This is something that used to be sold by Dazzle and then Pinnacle, and again, you can find this on eBay used for usually $20. Now, it's important to get the DVC100. That is because there's a version that looks just like this but is actually the DVC90, and the 90 does not have 64-bit Windows drivers, so do get the 100. Finally, there's another device that is preferred by a lot of console gamers who like to live stream. It's called the iData GV-USB 2. You can buy this new for $40. Don't be scared by the Japanese writing on the package. When you install the driver is in English, so you can still use it. Once you've picked hardware, we need some software, and we're going to be using essentially just two pieces of free software. The first one is virtualdub, which is sort of a Swiss Army knife for video. It can capture video, and it can also edit it and run filters on it, and that is what we'll be using for this tutorial. Later on, when we have our converted video file, it's going to be very large and needs to be compressed into a modern video format like MP4. For that, we're going to use Handbrake. Handbrake is actually available on Linux and Mac as well, but we're going to be using it on Windows. And again, it's only a few easy steps to take your large edited video and compress it down into MPEG-4. Okay, let's start capturing and converting video. I'm going to fire up virtualdub. And when it starts, it's empty. We need to capture a file first. So let's go to File, Capture AVI. Now once you're in the capture mode, I don't have my video source playing right now, so that's why this is blank, but let's go through everything that you need to do. First, you need to make sure you're picking the right device. In this case, my EasyCap shows up as USB 2.0 grabber, not a very distinctive name, but that's it. So always make sure you pick it, and the window goes away and then comes back as the device reinitializes. Then make sure you've picked the right video source. In our case, I'm going to be recording from actually an analog Handycam. Obviously, you would mostly be converting from a VHS player, and in both cases this is going to be composite. Next up, we want to check video capture pin. This is where you determine the format and the frame rate of what you're capturing. Now, NTSC analog video is actually 29.97 frames per second, so you should put that in. I know you would think that 30, which is what was there originally, would be a more even round number, but this is the actual broadcast rate of NTSC video, 29.97 frames per second. You will get less dropped frames and less problems if you put in the actual frame rate. The color space should stay YUY2. This is most likely what you're going to see. If you see something different, leave it alone. It's probably the correct default. And then for the actual capture size, what we want is something that retains all 480 lines. You'll see the default here is 720 by 480. We also have a 640 by 480 choice. This is up to you, but the typical digital representation of NTSC analog video is this slightly strange aspect ratio, 720 by 480. So unless you absolutely think you know what you're doing, you should really leave it at that. Now when I picked that, I noticed that it reset my frame rate, so I'm going to put that back to 29.97 and hit OK. Now once it reinitializes, we can see down here that it is set to 29.97, and it seems to be detecting about between 30 and 31, but this is correct. Let's see. I've noticed the audio rate is off, but we'll get to that in a second. In Capture Filter, under the video menu, you get options for your driver specifically. Some of these, depending on what device you have captured, you might have stuff like this, like VCR input, which would relax capture timing based on whether or not you had a VCR with a really stretched out tape or not. And then almost all of these have video proc amp, which lets you adjust the brightness and the contrast and everything. I'm actually going to force this to defaults right now. You may have to adjust this depending on how bad your tape is, but it's not a bad idea to start with the defaults. So we'll do that, wait for the window to reinitialize again. There it is. And that's actually it in terms of how many lines and the correct frame rate. The last thing we need to do is pick how we're going to store the video. So for that we go down to the compression option. And you may be tempted to do no compression, and that's fine, but keep in mind that 720 by 480 at 30 frames per second is going to take up quite a lot of video, roughly between 26 and 30 gig per hour. So that is, generally you want to pick a compression codec. Now, when you pick one of these, you should pick one that will affect the video the least, because it's going to get compressed later to MPEG-4. So this should be what is known as a lossless codec. You can see in my list I actually have Lagareth lossless codec. I also have a few others that are my favorites, such as UT video, which I find very fast. and I'm actually going to use UT video, so I'm going to pick that. Now if you don't have Lagarith or you don't have UT video, don't worry. I'm going to put a link in the description of this video so that you can download them. And they're free, just like virtualdub, so you won't have to pay anything for them. Alright, so we've got our size, our frame rate. Now we move on to audio, and what I want to do is change the raw capture format. I don't know how this got to 9600 stereo, but that's overkill for our source. What we're going to do is you should pick either 44-100 stereo or 48 stereo. I'm going to pick 48. Okay, and as soon as the window reinitializes, we can double check in the lower right hand corner that we are ready to go. 48 kilohertz, 16-bit stereo, and we're set to record at 2997. Now the last thing we need to do before actually recording is go to the Capture tab and look at timing. Now this is going to be different in any capture program that you have. In virtualdub, the Capture timing dialog describes how you want virtualdub to handle tape dropouts. So videotape isn't perfect, and if you're trying to convert it, you're probably working with 20 or 30-year-old sources. And over time, videotape stretches, and that affects the timing. Sometimes frames can be dropped or lost. Sometimes they can arrive too closely, and that's what this dialog does. The main options I like to enable in virtualdub when capturing are both of these two: drop frames when they're too close together, and insert blank frames. Not blank. Insert null frames when they're too far apart. A null frame is just simply a duplicate of the previous frame. Leave these both checked, and then resync mode, I like to have it at the very last option, which is sync audio to video by resampling the audio. So what this means is, if frames get dropped or inserted, virtualdub will keep the video timing at 2997, and it will maintain audio sync by resampling the audio. Audio sync is very important. If you are capturing an hour-long video, the last thing you want after your capture, after an hour has gone by, is to go back and play it and find that as the video plays, the audio keeps getting farther and farther behind, or farther and farther ahead, until at the end of your hour-long tape, people talk, you see their lips move, and then 3 seconds later you hear the sound, and that's horror. So leave this checked and you won't have sync problems. And then the rest you can leave it at defaults and hit OK. After that, we are ready to capture, but first we have to set where we're going to capture this information to. So do File, Set Capture File. I am going to pick a very large directory on a RAID drive that I have. Let's call this Raw Capture, and hit Save. And now we are actually ready to start. I'm going to start playing my analog source. I've hit play on my player right now, and it should show up. There we go. And to record it, all we need to do is do Capture, Capture Video. And after a second or two, it will start. There we go. Whoops, there's an error in the tape. This is why it's important to have all the resync options on. Okay, so there's some nice motion. Doggy goes around the baby. You can see down at the bottom, it is in fact recording the audio. I left audio playback off because it would interfere with this screencast, but you can turn on audio monitoring if you like. Alright, that seems to be good enough. We'll go ahead and stop the video. Rather, we're going to stop capturing. The video is still playing on my player, which I will stop right now. So we just captured to the file we set up, htemp raw capture. Now remember when I had corruption in that videotape when it got all noisy? Over on the right we get a summary of statistics that were taken from the capture. And we can see down here that sure enough there was a problem with the timing, and it inserted 17 frames for us, which was very nice of it. Okay, now that we have the video, let's move on to editing. To start editing, let's do File, exit the capture mode. We'll go back to the main editing window of virtualdub. And then we can load the file that we created, raw capture. VirtualDub shows you two windows. The first window is the file without any processing, and then the second window is the file after processing. Since we haven't done anything yet, they're the same. You can scrub through the video to double check it. There's that corruption right at the end, right at the beginning rather. And I am actually going to cut that out. VirtualDub is extremely easy to use as a very simple editor. If you want to cut out a section, you hit the Home key on the keyboard, move to where, that's the beginning of what you want to edit, move to the end, hit the End key, and then just hit Delete. And voila, you have now cut out that section. Now, that's all well and good, but take a look at our source video. Remember how I said video was interlaced? Well, let's zoom in. Sure enough, you can see this sort of combing effect. Some people call it mouse teeth. And as we go through by stepping the arrow keys left and right, we can see that sure enough, there are two moments in time in this file. There's the dog when it's in this position, and then the dog when it's moving a little bit more in this position. Let's put this back to 100%. So we need to process the fields. We need to separate them out into their own full frames. And VirtualDub has a handy filter for that, and we can apply it by going to Video, Filters, Add, Deinterlace. And when you do that, it gives you several options. What deinterlacing does is, what it's supposed to do anyway, is separate the fields into their own frames. Now, up until 5 or 10 years ago roughly, people didn't really understand how to handle deinterlacing, and so there were some fairly horrible options like blend them both together, or throw one of them away, or duplicate one. All of these are bad because they will give you a 30 frames per second output where you have thrown away one of the images, one of the fields inside this frame. We don't want that. What we want instead is to try to interpolate each field into its own frame. We have three options here. YaDiff is the best, so we're going to use that. And then, again, rather than keeping only the top or the bottom, we want to double the frame rate. Now you have two options here, top field first and bottom. And the thing is, this is different for each capture device. So what you have to do is pick one, single step through the video and see if you're right, and then if you're not, pick the other one. This isn't, there's nothing wrong with this. It all depends on how the capture device is and how the driver is. You just have to find the right one for your specific device. So I'm going to pick bottom and then hit OK. And now over in the after filter window on the right side, I'm going to single step with the arrow keys. I'm only going to be pressing the right arrow key to go forward in time. So here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now already you can tell something's wrong. The dog looks like it's taking 1 step forward, 2 steps back, right? So it goes back, forward, back, forward, back, forward. We have the field order wrong. Instead of getting the fields in the order that we want, which would be field 0, then 1, then 2, then 3, then 4, we're getting them swapped. We're getting 0, 2, 1, 3, etc. So that's the wrong field order. We go back to Video, Filters. You can double click on a filter to go back into its dialog, which I just did, and we're going to change the field order from bottom field first to top. Now hit OK. Now when I single step forward by hitting only the right arrow key, the motion is correct. Again, don't look at this at the before window, look at the after window. I'm going to go forward with the arrow keys. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And as you can see, going forward, it's perfect. And that, believe it or not, is it. You have just now captured and set up video to be correct. You've handled interlaced video correctly. Give yourself a pat on the back. Not even YouTube is doing this correctly. If you upload an interlaced video to YouTube, they throw away one of the fields. So you're already ahead of the game. Now, we're still in the editor. we need to save this out to a new file so that it's actually useful. So for that, let's pick a video codec, and for that we go to Video Compression, and again pick a lossless codec. Again, this is going to result in a fairly large file, but the file is temporary. We're going to compress it using Handbrake later in the tutorial. I'm going to stay with the same lossless codec I picked before, which is UT Video. Again, you can use anything you like as long as it's lossless. Lagarith is a popular choice. Huff YUV is another choice, but I'm going to use UT Video. So let's hit OK. And then to save out your changes to a new file, you just do Save as AVI. Let's go ahead and pick the same directory, but this time I'm going to call this Processed Capture. And after some churning, we have saved it out. Now I'm going to go ahead and play this file. Let's exit VirtualDub. Let's actually play the file and make sure that it is as smooth as I promised it would be. I'm actually going to play this with Windows Media Player because Windows Media Player does a pretty good job of maintaining 60 frames per second. Sounds strange, but it's true. So let's go ahead and do this, and I'll zoom it full screen. Okay, I have the audio disabled. So nice and smooth, good motion, everything looks great. Let's make sure it actually did the audio. Yep. Audio came through just fine. Now that we know our file is perfectly fine, it's time to encode it to MPEG-4. Now if you're not uploading to YouTube, we can go straight to encoding it to MPEG-4, and this would be if you wanted to give it to somebody, upload it to Facebook, put it on Plex or something like that. YouTube requires an extra step, so if YouTube is your real destination, then stick around because I will cover that a little bit later on in this tutorial. For now though, let's go ahead and encode it to MPEG-4. For that we're going to start Handbrake. Handbrake is a free video encoding tool. It is mostly used for converting movies, but there's nothing wrong with us using it for our own purposes. Let's remove some distractions here. And it couldn't be easier to use. We have our processed video capture here. All we have to do is hit the source button or file source, open a file, pick our processed capture, and then make sure our container is MP4. If you really love Matroska Video or MKV, you could pick that, but I prefer MPEG-4. And then simply go to the Video tab and do 59.94 frames per second, constant frame rate, and then that is really it. If you want to force slightly better quality, you can move the constant quality slider up to 18. But the default of 20 is usually good enough. Actually, I'm a bit of a stickler for quality, so I tend to slide it up to 18. And then all you have to do is start, and it starts encoding the video. And this is a short one, so it's going to be done really fast. And then we have our processed capture. Now it's an MPEG-4 format, and as you can see, the size is reduced drastically. But if we play it, it is still the same smooth motion. All the detail is there. We're all good. Now, if you're not uploading to YouTube, you're done. But if you are uploading to YouTube, there's something you need to know. YouTube only recognizes files as having 60 frames per second if they are 720 lines or more. And if you want to upload to YouTube and retain all of that smoothness and fluidity, you're going to have to resize the video so that it's 720 lines. I will show you a quick example of how to do that right now. Let's fire up VirtualDub and get back to where we were. we had loaded the raw capture, and just for giggles I'll remove this corruption again like we did previously. Remember that we had added our deinterlacing filter, so here I am doing video filter deinterlace, and we found that our field rate was top field first. Now, we're ready. Let's just single step and make sure. Okay. If this is going to be uploaded to YouTube, we need to resize it to be at least 720 lines. So we have to add another filter. Video, filter, add, and then pick the resize filter. Now, for this, not only does it need to be 720 lines or more, and you can see when I did that, it adjusted the other number as well. While we're resizing, we have the opportunity to correct the aspect ratio. So I'm actually going to disable this and pick the correct number, which is actually 960. 960 by 720 is a 4:3 aspect ratio with square pixels. So this is going to resize it, and it's going to look just fine on YouTube. Now, the filter mode, this is just what resizing method you use. We're enlarging, so there's not a whole lot of difference between the precise bicubic and the Lanczos. I'm just going to leave it at precise bicubic. We hit OK. We hit OK, and now watch the left side window. You'll notice it's bigger. That's because we now have our resize filter applied. If we single step through this, we can still see it looks fine. It's just simply bigger. 960 pixels across by 720 lines down. Now we continue again with the saving. We pick a codec. I'm still picking the same lossless codec I used before. And again, file save as AVI, and that's pretty much it. Now I'm just going to call this export for YouTube. Now this takes a little longer because the file is bigger. You'll also see that it's almost double the size. I know this is alarming, but remember, this file is, like the last one, a temporary file that you're only using for this export and editing. So here's our export for YouTube. It's pretty big, but the encoding process is exactly the same. You bring it into Handbrake, you pick 59.94 frames per second. That's because that is the stock field rate of NTSC analog video. And save it out, and you're done. And then you'll have something that you can upload to YouTube, and it will be just as smooth and fluid as you saw in the very beginning of this tutorial. So I hope that was useful for you. If you have any further questions or comments, please feel free to leave them. There are lots of extended topics I could have gone into, like noise reduction or cropping or things like that, and those are more advanced topics for another day. The main point of this tutorial was to get you understanding what interlaced video is and how to process it correctly, and I hope you've learned something. Thanks for watching.